Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back. Thank you for starting off your week, or if it's later in the week, thank you at least for checking us out. But if you're watching, if you're listening, however you're consuming this episode, very thankful for you taking 30 minutes out of your day to check out what we have going on. As you can see, I have a new guest with me this week. Maria is joining me to talk all about content marketing, communications, a very popular field industry right now. So thank you, Maria, for taking some time to jump on here with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Course, yeah, definitely. So if you've watched the show, listen, we usually start off just talking about motivators, goals, what's going on in the week ahead. So this is the culmination. We forcibly put my daughter into ballet about 8 months ago. She started this, and her recital is coming up this weekend, and this is the big motivator for us. Those 2 minutes, maybe 90 seconds that we'll see her on stage during a 2 hour program. Very much looking forward to this. She's been practicing her dance moves, and kudos to the people that teach ballet and dance to 5 year olds, because I don't know how you do it, but they're very excited about this. We have family coming in, so she's very much looking forward to being up on the stage. Whether she sticks with dance or not remains to be seen, but we'll always have this recital. So that's the big motivator for my week ahead, is just kind of getting to see all the lessons that we've taken her to how they've paid off and what she's learned, because it's closed door at her ballet. They don't let the parents kind of view, probably because they would just easily get distracted. So no clue
Oh,
what goes
interesting.
on in her dance classes for the hour that I'm sitting outside in the lobby waiting. So I'm very much looking forward to kind of seeing all of that. So that's the big motivator for me in terms of goals and what I have going on in work. You probably heard me talk about it every week if you've been following along with the show, but we're right in the heart of the internship program, which I'm helping to run and coordinate this year. So just kind of keeping in track with that. Outside of what our interns get to do with their direct hiring managers and supervisors, we like to try to give some additional stuff. So creating some additional trainings, getting them up to speed on some things that aren't necessarily aligned with their degree program, giving them insight on like resume building, interviewing, building your brand through social media, which I'm sure Maria, you'll have plenty of tips on that too. But it's kind of what we are aiming to do as they go through the 10-week program. So that's kind of my goal for these next few weeks, is just to stay on top of that, make sure that answering questions and providing them some strong insight on what they need to learn as they're a part of the company for these 10 weeks. So that's my motivators, my goals. Maria, what's going on in your world this week?
Yeah, we had a long weekend vacation with just my little family. I have two little toddler boys, so kind of right behind you, 4 and 2-year-old. And so just getting into this week, I had some interviews and wrapping up a client project. So just feeling refreshed and ready to jump back into it. And yeah, the schools here are already off, so all the kids were like at Costco with their parents and stuff. So it's just the summer spirit is here, and I'm very much better for it. So
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
me.
Definitely. Yeah, it's so important to take those extra days and just do the family stuff when you can. So
Yeah.
it's great that you got the chance to do that for sure. So you and I connected. I asked you to come and join the show because you've been working in content marketing communications for the past several years, and it's not the easiest field to get started in or find success, but you've been able to navigate through that these past few years here. And I know there's a lot of people that are very interested in, can I get my career started in content creation and marketing, things like that, especially a lot of the people I'm connected with who are transitioning out of education and looking for something new, since as educators they're constantly creating content and doing marketing,
Yeah.
things like that. So it's a very popular one. So I wanted to have someone who's been in the industry for some time kind of just share your story. So what initially inspired you to pursue content creation as a career, and what keeps you motivated in terms of looking for these opportunities as you continue to explore new industries and positions?
Yeah, sure. So I started in content marketing and PR pretty much right out of the gate. From I had an internship. You're talking about internship programs. It makes me remember.
Hmm.
I worked for CarMax headquarters as a
Okay.
PR intern, and so just really learning, being a sponge, seeing what goes on, behind the scenes of media relations and social media. And this was like back in 2014.
Mhm.
Um, but and so much has changed since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, just knowing that I knew I was a good writer, I knew that I liked writing, and I knew I was had a good like strategy mindset once I learned, the ropes of things.
Mhm.
So that really helped with my content marketing career, where it's not just about writing, like you're not a novelist. It's about how can you write to either generate sales, inspire thought leadership, get press coverage, whatever your goals are in the role, and with that company. Um, how can you use words or now video design to
Yeah.
get that? And so, speaking to your point about formal former educators, they are such a great like transferable skill to go into a content writing career. Like once they learn the marketing side, they have those writing, the writing side of things. And content marketing is organic marketing. So it's really about educating and teaching, which is what they're good at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's an excellent field for people or educators to look into, and especially if they have a special like if they're a subject matter expert in a certain field, like if they're a biology teacher and they want to go into like a pharmaceutical company or something like that's where they're really going to get that competitive edge.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you had enjoyed writing. Was it something that you kind of had to learn to kind of make it more concise, compact, get into marketing? Because that's something that I even struggled with it, even though that was kind of a point of being an English teacher, always telling people pare away and cut this down. Don't use 15 words when you can do this in three. And now when I'm writing my interview notes, I still find myself like with paragraphs where I'm like, man, no one's going to read this bullet points, let's get to the point, stuff like that. So is that something that you had to adjust to early on in your career?
Yes, for sure. So I kind of got super speeded with learning different writing techniques for different formats, whether it was like long form blog posts or ebooks or social media. Like you approach them all differently.
Mhm.
And I was in a content marketing agency. And so being able to work on different clients and in different industries with all these different kinds of formats was really just like a supercharge. I always say marketers should spend like a little bit of time in an agency because it just really helps you to see what, you know, I think it's like a super star power for your
Right.
career. So yeah, so like especially and I've had, there are lots of jobs that require writing that are different than marketing writing. Like
Mhm.
one of a person that I coached on my team when I was leading a content marketing team was a lawyer. And she was, of course, very good at writing law stuff
Right.
and legal stuff. It did not fly with being for an audience like our audience.
Mhm.
And so that was almost one of the hardest. Like, even though she's a good writer with legal stuff, it was very hard to edit her stuff because she needed to almost like scrap all that
Right.
and just, you're talking to your whoever your audience is, but they're probably not going to know all that legalese.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned that the agency work, and when it comes to success in content marketing, content creation, a lot of that is dependent on your ability to adapt to new markets. With that being said, I know you said that you mentioned the internship that you did with CarMax. So was that kind of the automotive industry? Was that like your introduction into marketing? And how did you kind of challenge yourself to expand your skills so you weren't limited in terms of the types of clients that you were supporting?
Yeah, I would say really any good communicator or marketer is going to be really versatile in like you can plot me in healthcare, you can plot me in um, an engineering firm, you can plot me in a high chairs seller, and I can adapt and and that's not always the case. That's my superpower, and I call myself like a chameleon because I've that's been something that I've done all those things that I've mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not always the most attractive on a job when you're, applying for a job because they're like, oh, you weren't in this specific niche of software for like 10 years. And it's like, no, but I can adapt,
Yeah.
So even like at CarMax in my internship, like I really don't feel like it was the automotive industry. That was more, I would say, retail,
Mhm.
which kind of helped later when I started niching down into the consumer space and direct to consumer brands. Um, but yeah, I would say like knowing, and sometimes you're going to lean towards one way or the other. For
Right.
me, I know that my time in the agency again was really helpful for learning that. That agency decided to focus on law clients and on architecture, engineering, and design firms. For me, that wasn't my strength of industry or even what I liked writing about, because when you're a content writer, you have to research this stuff all day and write
Yeah.
about it all day. I didn't want to. That was not enjoyable for me, and so going into, and then of course I left and went to a tax debt services firm, which is not that much better.
Right.
Actually, probably worse. Um, but yeah, it's just all about like, and sometimes the sexiest industries are not the best. Like they're not the most fun. So for
Sure.
me, doing all of them, I've kind of figured out that I really like the B2B side, and I really like B2B SaaS. So that's kind of where I'm looking now in my job search.
Okay. So when it comes to the initial introduction that you're doing with a client, what are some of the similarities in terms of, are there like basic questions that you will ask kind of any client that you're going to be working in with, and then the differences probably come when it gets more nuanced? Is that a fair assessment? Like you have your boilerplate questions, and then you can dig a little deeper specifically for the content based on the industry.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, in B2B, it's B2B and B2C. It's like any customer is emotionally driven, and so you really want to get behind that first. And you know, sometimes it's the emotion is I want to have more time, but like I don't want to stare at the spreadsheet too long. And
Right.
sometimes it's I want my baby to have this aesthetic, and it's like I'll feel like I have status. And
Mhm.
so it's very different sometimes, but what's like that ultimate goal and what's that ultimate emotion driving that's kind of the core of every brand and every messaging strategy and every copywriting project. But then when it gets down to the nuts and bolts of like, is this to drive more thought leadership? Is this to get more quick sales from one email? Like in direct to consumer, sometimes price is like way heavier of a factor than, you know, we use all these, we've been quoted in this magazine. Like sometimes that doesn't matter, right? So it's really um at the core, yeah, like emotion would be one thing that I always try to get, like what's
Okay.
driving them.
Gotcha. So a lot of people who are in content creation marketing have kind of talked about, the most important thing that you're branding is yourself when you're getting into this, and building your own brand, kind of showing people who you are, and using different platforms to kind of showcase that. So early on in your career, what were kind of some of the pain points? How did you try to utilize like different forms of social media, blogs, things like that, to really kind of have a portfolio of examples of your writing, examples of what you were creating before you had landed that first job, so you could kind of showcase that as, you can reference this as some of the material that can give you insight on what I can do for you as a company.
Yeah, so early in my career, I would just have a Google Drive and save things. People like hiring teams don't care if it's in PDF format or if you have like a fancy website. Sometimes the PDF format's easier to read and quicker to read, as you would know as
Mhm.
a talent person. Like sometimes just the quickest and easiest to access is better.
Right.
Um, And that kind of evolved into when I was serious about going off on my own and really doing client work. I, built a website and then I had it hosted on there. As far as social media platforms, probably during the pandemic was when, so I was laid off like April 2020 with a 3-month old at home, like very, like most of America, just like what is
Right.
happening. Um, Luckily got to spend time with my baby, but then was still job searching. Like I still wanted to be in house, and I always told myself, "Oh, I'm never freelance. I'm never gonna be on my own." Well, famous last words. That's what I ended up doing, and was really good at it actually. And so, um, what I how I kind of got a lot of my clients inbound was from just being myself online and tying my interests and things that I like would tweet, mostly on Twitter. Like that's where I kind of built a lot of my initial audience. Um, and it's not big. Like I don't have 10,000 followers or more. Like
Right.
it's it's the people that needed to find me could find me, and the people that wanted somebody in the parenting space, wanted a copywriter, wanted somebody who was, could do humor. Like they knew, oh, Maria. And like you kind of know when you're there when people tag you in other people's stuff. Like, oh, I'm looking for this, niche of a person. And it's like, oh, I know Maria, Maria, Maria. And that shows up because like even like I rank on Google for like the number 1 spot of like parenting copywriter or something. So it's
Oh,
like, when people are finding you.
yeah.
And so for me, like I was just myself. I don't even talk about like the best ways to do this and that. Like I didn't even try to like be a super thought leader in anything. But that is part of my personal brand, is that
Yeah.
I'm like more off the cuff, less like more informal,
Okay.
more approachable, and then just building relationships. And especially if you have people trying to change industries, coming up from an internship, like meet people and like get on a Zoom with them and
Yeah.
get on a cell phone and go for a walk with them. Like people who and you want to have kind of a mutual reason to have them talk to you,
Right.
but that has been just such a tool in my, like, the last couple of years. I've made best friends from Twitter,
Yeah.
like who I do like work related collaborations with, or we just text each other about like, this client or whatever. And
Yeah.
so that's been really, really, like, relationship building is just so, so important. And relationship building and personal brand are like go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely correct. So I want to talk a little bit more about the search during the pandemic, because I'm sure, I mean,
Yeah.
you alluded to it was a crazy time for everyone. So much uncertainty, but a lot of companies at that point really needed to have people on board that were going to help them with branding and marketing because of all that uncertainty. So how did you kind of rely on that, on your network, on your connections to find those opportunities and kind of get in front of people and say, hey, here's what I can do for you during this uncertain time?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I was job searching, but kind of took a really basic like data entry. Somebody posted on Twitter like, "Hey, I need some." I think it was very specific, like any moms who are out of work right now and like can help me with this project for a couple hours. I was like, sure, I'm organized and can do like probably whatever it was.
Mhm.
And then it turned into, you know, one of my biggest contract clients that I was with for 2 years. And that has been just taking like don't like humble yourself enough to like take those small things that might turn into something bigger.
Mhm.
And for me, that even kickstarted, they were in the direct to consumer space, and that kickstarted people being like, oh, you need a direct to consumer copywriter, Maria. You need, women's wellness, Maria. So it kind of snowballed from there. And then after I already had the client base in that space, that's when I chose my niche.
Okay.
So I think people do it backwards a lot. They're like, I'm in a niche, in, you know, jewelry for old people. Like, and it's like, okay, but like, do you have clients there? And is there a demand there? And it's like, I don't know. But for me, that was like what I was getting, and I was consistently getting clients for it. So I was like, okay, this, and I enjoyed it at the time. So I like even branded myself as DTC mom, and that was really when I made my social content a mix of job stuff. I kind of had three tiers, like three pillars. It was like parenting, copy and content slash work stuff, and then like miscellaneous whatever else. I talk about the Enneagram a lot. So I'll even have people be like, DM me and be like, you're the one who talks about the Enneagram, right? Can you help me figure out? So like just put yourself out there, because you never know who's following you. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times it's people who aren't very out, so
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned it a couple of times, and I wanted to talk about it since the contract positions have given job seekers pause in the past, and there's a lot of hesitation, when looking for your next opportunity to consider the contracted position. And I've worked in contracted roles in the past, and I know the benefits. I know some of the hesitations too, but I always kind of champion for them because it ultimately worked out for me. So while you were working in your contracted role, what were some of the benefits that you saw that if people come to you and say, hey, would you consider a contracted position, you can say yes because of these things?
great question. Contract roles are totally underrated. Having been in, I always kind of poo-pooed them because I'm like, no, I just want to be full-time and like a team.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? In a contract role, you get all the benefits of being part of the team.
Yeah.
You just might not have, the health insurance or whatever. You might not have the full employee benefits, which for me, it was fine.
Mhm.
Um, and I still felt very part of the team with that specific role. I went on like a cool trip that we did together. Like I was very much a part of the team. You get flexibility because depending on, your contract, obviously, it might not have you in like certain hours or certain time. Um, as long as you get your work done kind of thing, or if
Mhm.
you're on a retainer. That was my situation. Um, and it's just like a way to test out a different market, like a different industry, a different job kind of role, and
Mhm.
learn from the people in that organization. So that's what really helped me, was just learning from different people and knowing, as somebody who loves change, like, oh, if this ends, I can change. And so some people might not like that part of it,
Right.
but for me, it's really a superpower to get extra things on your resume that you might be overlooked for in like a full-time role.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you had mentioned the DTC mom, the DTC women community that you founded, that you had to provide support to women in the e-commerce industry. So how did this initiative kind of go from the ideas of, oh, I want to do this, to making it an actual thing? And what are some of the main ways that you aim to provide the support to other women who are in marketing and e-commerce?
Yeah, sure. So after a couple years of consulting and freelancing for, consumer brands, I had a former client who was a friend, who was a now friend. She just really would talk to me about, and I've had other women express the same thing. It's hard in the D2C space. It's very, it's like they have like a bro culture, like on Twitter and things like that, um, which everyone kind of knows in that space.
Mhm.
And she was like, we need a space where we can ask questions without feeling, like we're dumb, or like somebody's gonna mansplain it to us.
Mhm.
And she's like, you would be really good at that. And I'm like, I would, you're right. Because I love connecting people. And it's so funny. I literally started the Slack group, like just like signed up on Slack for it in January last year. And I didn't like actually start inviting people until September. Like I sat on it for 9 months for what?
Yeah.
And in the 4 week, like the first 4 weeks, we had like 60 people in it.
Oh
And
wow.
then now we have around 90, all referral. Like I don't really post about it very much.
Mhm.
It's just I want it to be intimate and a safe space. And
Yeah.
so some ways that that community and really all Slack, I'm in a lot of Slack communities because I find them so helpful.
Yeah.
The best things that is they're there for is just like a space to go with like the kind of the niche that you want to talk about and find people who are maybe more ahead than you, maybe a little smarter than you, maybe have a different perspective, and also be able to give back to those who might be behind you and all that kind of stuff. So it's really been such a my community. I say that I think of it as like an island, and they come there to like the watering hole, but then I don't want them to stay there. I want them to go back to the mainland and like take up space, take up the seats.
Yeah.
So that's really our challenge as a community and kind of what we've been doing.
That's amazing. I love that. So then last question before we end here is the one that I ask anyone, and you're in a unique position because you said you've led teams and supervised teams. You're also in this support group where you're giving insight, giving advice. So when it comes to the key piece of advice that you've either received along the way as part of some of the searches that you've been on, or if people ask you, Maria, I'm looking to enter this industry, what advice can you give me? What is usually that key piece of advice that you will present as this has helped me and I think it would help you too?
Number one thing, make a spread or make a Google Doc, a Notion of whatever on your website, a sticky note. Make something that's straightforward about what you're looking for, what, whether it's title options, compensation, what kind of industry, what kind of company, culture, um, and add links to all the things that they might need. So a portfolio, a resume, all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And share it and like be open. People are not going to know what you're looking for if you're not telling them. And
Right.
so for me, I'm always like, this is harsh, but like save the sob story. Like I see them all the time on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, great. I'm sorry you're like about to, have to sell your car, but tell us what you're looking for so
Mhm.
people can help you. And
Yeah.
so um, it's been the best thing that I've done in my last two job searches, actually, because even friends can like see it and be like, oh, I'll refer, like, oh, I won't send you those types of jobs because I can tell that that was on your like, no, thank you list,
Right.
basically. So that's been really helpful.
Okay. Awesome. So, well, thank you so much, Maria, for taking the time to jump on here with me. If you're not connected, following Maria on LinkedIn, make sure you're doing that. And if you're watching along and listening, have any questions, feel free to send them in. I will forward them along if they come through. But thanks so much to everyone who listened to watch, and we will see you next Monday.
Yeah, thanks. See ya.